What's going on, guys? Jeff here, Corals Unlimited. Today we're going to be taking a look at setting up a Nano Reef tank. But before we jump into that, if this is your first time being here, this is where I talk about everything reef tank related. So if you love the reef tanks like I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell so you can be notified every single time that we upload a new video. Now today we're setting up a Nano Reef tank, so let's jump into it. All right, so the tank that we're going to be using is the Nuvo Fusion 15-gallon all-in-one from Innovative Marine. This is the desktop model. It's a good starter kit. Comes with a couple things to get you started, and then you just need to choose your lighting, substrate, and rock. So we already got one of these guys opened, and we got some things set aside. So let's go over the components of setting up a Nano Reef tank. All right, so this is the 15-gallon out of the box. This is a display here at the store. So had a service customer. They had a nano tank set up, and there was some issues with that nano tank. It was giving us a little bit of trouble. And ultimately, I decided that this was going to be a better fit for them. It was a little bit of an upgrade, gave them a little bit more water to work with. And they already had the BioCube stand, which when we swapped out the tank, obviously did the measurements beforehand, it actually worked out really well and looked very sleek. Really like this stand, and it complements the Innovative Marine 15-gallon pretty well. As far as what you get out of the box, there is a rubber mat on the bottom of the tank, which is going to help with the leveling. You get some paperwork in there as well, and then a thank you guide, and it just kind of goes over the specs of the tank and what you're getting with that. Comes with one filter sock, which filter socks can help with the reduction of organic matter breaking down in the tank. You just need to have enough socks kicking around to be able to change them out. And then also this kit comes with the pump as well. Pretty simple plumbing. It's a little pump. A lot of folks upgrade these to the CJ 1. Some folks go a little bit smaller with the 0.5, but either of them is an upgrade in comparison to this pump. But this is a good pump to get you started nonetheless. So that's our tank. We're just going to be putting one over here on the counter. We're going to leave this guy alone for now. Go ahead and hide that electrical there. Allow this one to continue to be a display for us here at the store. All right, so the basics of setting up a Nano Reef tank. One, you need to find a good location. I would make sure that you have electrical nearby. This is probably not the best situation for electrical. You want to make sure that water can't get into it. But we run ground fault indicators throughout the entire store, so I'm taking some liberties there. But at home, I probably wouldn't do that. So finding a good sturdy place to put the tank, with this being the desktop model, and a couple other things I would consider with location. You don't want to have it directly next to a heating source. Like in the store, we have central air, so we wouldn't want to have it under a blower. In the summer months, we're going to be hitting it with air condition. In the winter months, we're going to be hitting it with heat, so that'd be something to consider. Make sure that you have an electrical outlet nearby, and then not directly near a window. And I guess last but not least, make sure that whatever you're putting it on is sturdy enough to be able to hold the weight of the tank, because once you get the sand, the rock, and the water in there, it's going to weigh a good little amount there. As far as the components of setting up the tank, for the cycling process, lighting isn't 100% necessary, but we are going to put a light on there just for now. I like using the Kessel on this tank. I think we're going to do two different builds with this tank. We're going to do like a all tricked out build, which we'll get to that later, and then a very basic setup. I like the Kessel lights. The reason I like the Kessel is that it's going to give the coral the spectrum of color that it needs. It doesn't matter if you have it a little bit heavier on the whites or a little bit heavier on the blues, the coral is going to get what it needs. Next up is a heater. I like using the Aquatop heaters here at the store. We sell those quite a bit. I've run a ton of them and they haven't failed us yet, so still pretty high on those. We're going to use some substrate. This is the regular reef sand. There is a bacteria in here, and we'll kind of get into the whole bacteria thing here in a little bit more detail in a second. And then we got rock. I like a little bit less rock in my smaller tanks than I do in my bigger tanks, generally because I'm trying to accommodate for corals and allowing them to grow in a smaller space. You don't want to just load the tank up with a bunch of rock. So as far as placement on this guy, we do have it kind of close to this other tank. So I am going to probably move it down a little bit further. That was heavier than I thought. Go back to the gym. I think I knocked my mic into the glass too. So move this a little bit away from the larger tank that we have here off to the side. We got our pump installed, and then we got our electrical for a pump right here. We already put the light on. We just got to clean up our zip ties, and then I think we do have the electrical for that as well. So we got all those guys here. Let's go ahead and bring you guys in a little bit closer so you can take a look at what we're doing. All right, so first thing we're going to do is open up our heater. Get that in the tank. We're not going to plug it in. We're not going to plug it in until we have everything that we need in the tank ready to go. It does come with suction cups. You can use them if you want. A lot of times I'll just make sure this goes in the tank. There are 3 compartments here in the back, and the compartment that you want to put the heater in is the compartment before the return section. If you put that heater in the return section, because this is an all-in-one tank, all the evaporation is going to happen in that return section. So if you had a heater in the return section, it's going to be exposed to air, then not be exposed to air, submersed in water, then exposed to air again, and that could cause some issues, and we want to avoid that. So we're going to go ahead and put this guy in the middle chamber. So we got our filter sock, the middle chamber here, and then we have a larger return section. I like to put it at as much of an angle as I possibly can. Stretch out our cord here. Just put it with our other electrical. Then we want to put in our rock. So it's better to put the rock in on the bare bottom and then put the sand in afterwards, and that's going to help lock the sand, or I'm sorry, lock the rock in place. A bit of a struggle. And if you were to put some type of goby in there, and he starts digging under the rock work and your sand isn't going, or your sand's underneath the rock, then you're going to end up in a tight spot. Now we're going to add our sand. So the carob sea sand has water in it, and that's to keep bacteria alive. There is some type of food in this stuff for the bacteria itself, and it's incredibly important if you're using like a product like Dr. Tim's One and Only, that you don't use the ammonium, which is the bacteria food. So you can use Dr. Tim's One and Only with live sand, but you don't want to use it with the ammonium, because what can happen is there is some type of source of ammonia in here feeding the bacteria, and then if you add more ammonium on top of it, you're going to have a situation where your ammonia gets high too quick, and then your NO2 gets high too quick, and then your cycle can collapse. And that was actually something that happened a lot here in the store when we first set up the store. So I'm going to try to avoid that. And we're going to not add any ammonium. You guys can learn from my mistakes. All right, we're going all in. Might be a little too much of sand, or substrate, but we're doing it all. There's our packet. So in every one of these things of sand, there is a clarifier. You don't want to leave that in the tank. You can put it in the water if you want to, but your tank's going to be cloudy for a day or two, and that dust will settle. But that clarifier can help with that. All right, so we added our sand in here. I probably put in a little too much sand, but that's really an aesthetic thing. So if you want more sand in there, you can do it if you want. If you want less sand, do bare bottom, however you want to do it. I like the rock work. Well, we'll get the sand off it when we add the water, but again, it's going to be pretty cloudy for a day or so. This light seems like it's centered at the mount, but a little crooked a little bit further up, so we might make that adjustment there. But yeah, so we got our sand in there, we got our rock in there, heaters in there. This one I took the filter sock out a while ago. I typically don't run socks. All the electrical plugs are draped over to the side here, so all we have to do now is start adding our water, and then we can put in some bacteria as well if we want. All right, so when I add the water to the tank, I'm going to focus mostly on the rock, just try to minimize the amount of sand blasting that ends up happening. But it's going to move around. You're going to have bald spots that happen, or bare spots, and you can just cover it over once things settle down. But for pouring in, I am going to focus mostly on the rocks, just to make sure that we get all that sand off from the rock, which it would happen eventually over time. And another thing that happens, so we put the rock in first and then put the sand in, and as we pour in the water, that sand is going to fill in the cracks and the bare spots underneath the rock, basically locking it in place. So that's another benefit of doing it this way. Slow and steady wins the race. All right, so we got the tank filled up. We're gonna let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, let the heater adjust to the temperature of the water. We do need to talk about the salinity and where we have that at to cycle the tank a little bit faster. I'll give you guys a little secret tip on that. But once the 15 minutes is up, we'll go ahead and plug everything in, get it operational, and it'll be the long wait of cycling a reef tank. So the typical salinity that I keep in a reef tank is about 35 parts per thousand. I measure in salinity, not specific gravity. You can figure out the calculation on that. Just Google it. When I am cycling a tank, I actually will water down the salinity. So I will bring it down to like 19 or even 18 parts per thousand. And what ends up happening there is your bacteria cell spends less time trying to maintain its cell wall and puts more energy into creating more cells and dividing itself. So it can actually speed up the process of cycling a reef tank. Now, one incredibly important thing to mention in this is you don't want to be in a situation where you are cycling with a fish and watering the tank down. Yes, they can get that low, and sometimes when they ship fish, they bring them down that low, but you don't want to play that game. You want to make sure that you're keeping your livestock safe. It's best to cycle a tank without livestock anyways, but using this super secret tip will help you cycle your tank just a skosh bit faster. All right, so we've been sitting here for a couple minutes, looking pretty good. No leaks, it's always a good thing. Pretty clear even for being just filled up. But now is the moment of truth, and we're gonna go ahead and plug this puppy in. So that is our return pump, then this is our heater, and then we have our light. You don't need the light during the cycle. It's not necessary to cycle a tank. You're actually probably better off if you do it without a light, because it can help reduce the electric bill for one, and also algae growth. But we're gonna be looking like a little snow globe here for a little bit, and then once that settles down, we can put that clarifier in there that will help that, but it'll take a day or two for this to clear up. And then it's just the long wait of cycling a tank. So the key to success with a Nano Reef tank is patience. Patience is one of the most important things, especially when it comes to a Nano Reef tank, because it's such a small body of water. Things can happen very, very fast. But if you want to learn more about Nano Reef tanks, check this video out. I will see you over there.